It's not the MCG, you're going to a volleyball match under the Eiffel Tower, which is just incredible.
Seeing them achieve their dream, like you get goosebumps and you want to cry for them because it's so amazing.
There's some things Paris have done which are new, sort of, I guess, push the boundaries, which is great. So then that makes us think, well, what can we take from their games?
I certainly think in Olympic terms, this is close to the best Olympic Games that I've attended and I've had the joy of being at.
For me, that's been a highlight, the networks and the ability to be able to use sport as a way to connect and reconnect with friends.
Everyone has a different story to tell you, and I love learning from everyone here.
Different parts of the world combined for their sport that they're really passionate about. That's what's really good about the Olympics, I think.
Everyone is really happy and motivated to be there.
Just the magic around Paris as a city is pretty special.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered too.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Grad Podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. Brought to you by Deakin University, home to the world's #1 sports science school. My name is Ruben Williams. I'm an ex-Cricket Australia employee who now helps people get their dream job in sport. And if you haven't already, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, on this show, I learn how people made it in the sports industry every week and tease out their career decisions, their work habits, their skills, everything they do that makes them great. Also, that you can learn how to get into sport, get promoted, and get thriving in a wonderful industry that impacts so many, many people. Now, firstly, if you've been missing your weekly dose of Sports Grad pod over the last few weeks, I'm sorry. I took a little break. I've been in London and I've been at the Olympics, so apologies for not keeping up the podcast. However, I have been busy meeting a lot of amazing people who work in top-tier European sports in particular, and soon I'm really, really keen to get many of those people who I've met on my trip on the pod in the future. So please excuse my weeks off. I hope you'll forgive me, but I've been getting around to bring you some epic interviews in the future. Now, I am recording this from Paris. I've been here for 2 weeks so far, and I've still got 4 days to go before I move on. But I'm going to save my reflections and thoughts from Paris for another day because I have quite a few thoughts. I've been to the FIFA World Cup, the Cricket World Cup, and now the Olympic Games. And so I'm keen to kind of pull together some thoughts and reflections and comparisons so that you guys can see how different major events do it differently, at least from my perspective. And so I'm still here for a few more days. And at the rate that things are happening every single day, something will pop up before I leave. So I'm going to save that for another episode. So stay tuned for that. Instead, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce you to several people who are working at the Olympic Games. And now the purpose of this is to help you guys who might have been sitting at home watching on the TV and you might be thinking, gosh, I would love to be over there in Paris right now. I'd love to be getting paid to work in sport. Well, if that's you, then have a listen to how these people made it happen. So I've gone around with my little microphone and caught a few people where they've been working in Paris and just asked them a few questions about, who they are, what they do, how they got to their jobs so that you can understand how to reach these goals. So these people are coming to you from areas like commercial partnerships, commercial development, sales, media rights, PR, social media, and more. A few of them have been on the podcast before, and if they sound interesting to you, then for a handful of them, you will be able to find a link to their full interview in the show notes. So have a look at that and you'll be able to hear, a full 45 to 60-minute interview that really dives into the depths of how they got to where they are. But if you are particularly interested in some of the guests who we haven't had on the show before, let me know who you want to learn from and I'll reach out to them and we'll see if we can get them on for a full interview. One last mention before we jump in. If you enjoy this style of podcast where, you get a bit of everything from all the people across a single event so you can really get a good cross-section of what options are out there, I would encourage you to go and check out episode 256, which is called Meet the People Working for Sail GP at the Saint-Tropez Regatta, which is where I went to the SailGP event last year in southern France and essentially did the same thing. Barbara Sikorsky, who's the media operations head of out there, very kindly introduced me to just about everybody working for SailGP. And so I got a little interview with everyone there. And again, it's another great event that you can see all the different range of jobs that go into working on this traveling circus that is SailGP. So if you like this, I'd encourage you to check out that episode as well to get some short snippets on what is available. But without further ado, grab a pen. I hope you enjoy this episode from the Paris Olympic Games. Hey guys, just a quick break to ask you, do you want to study at one of the top universities in the world for sport? That's what I did at least. At Deakin, you can do just that, and coming up in August is your chance to do so. Don't miss the opportunity to see what sets them apart this August, where you can check out their state-of-the-art facilities. Honestly, they've added so much since I was there. It looks amazing. You can hear from world-class academics. Jonathan Robertson, he's still one of my favourites rolling around, and you can connect with current students and experience the Deakin vibe that they are famous for. Search Deakin Open Day and get the inspiration you need to plan your future in sport. You can also win a share of $4,000 of prizes just by registering, so you'd be silly not to. The Geelong Open Day is happening down on Waterfront and the Warren Pond campuses on Sunday the 18th of August, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then up in Melbourne, the Burwood Open Day is happening on Sunday the 25th of August from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. See you there.
So Andrew Ryan, and Managing Director of FIBA Media. So we look after the commercialisation, distribution and production of all of the main FIBA events, ranging from the Men's and Women's World Cup, all of the different continental events such as Eurobasket, qualifiers around those, and we also look after various elements like the OTT service, distribution of betting rights for both video and data as well.
And what brings you to Paris?
So we've got a fairly extensive hospitality and commercial program with a lot of our partners out here. So obviously we have quite a crossover with broadcasters who are also part of the Olympic rights structure as well. And given that basketball is such a large part of the Olympic program, it's been a great opportunity to help some of our partners sample the Olympic basketball, but also continue to develop those relationships as part of our FIBA commercial program.
And before you're doing this job, what were the 2 or 3 previous jobs you had that led to it?
So I was pretty closely connected to this Olympic world. I was at the IOC as the head of media, legal and business affairs for broadcast and media for 4 years. So I was working at IOC headquarters for both the Pyeongchang 2018 Games and also the Rio 2016 Games. And before that was with Performance Sports Media.
And you've had a few career highlights. Where does this stack amongst them?
This is pretty good. It's hard to sometimes discern between what is the highlight on a personal level of actually being a part of a major event and something that you know is momentous and special. I certainly think in Olympic terms, this is close to the best Olympic Games that I've attended, and I've had the joy of being at Sydney 2000, London 2012, Pyeongchang, Vancouver back in the day. And there's just something immensely special with the vibrancy and the momentum that's been created here in Paris, and full credit to the organising committee and obviously the IOC for doing a fantastic job. And I guess it's also been an interesting experience here being on the International Federation commercial side rather than structured right within the middle of the IOC. And one of the big advantages of this is that we get to have such a hyper focus on our sport in particular, and making sure that it's delivered well, making sure that our commercial partners are getting to experience that in the way that we would like, but within that Olympic structure. So being here has been personally incredibly enjoyable, but also very much a career highlight. And I think there's a lot of that we can look at this that I'm sure future Olympic Games will take on board as well. But it's also served to highlight just how top tier that our main events, the FIBA World Cup and the FIBA Women's World Cup, are as well. And those two events really still for us are the pinnacle of world basketball, both with the breadth of the teams, the intensity of competition over a long time period going.
And what's the feeling amongst staff behind the scenes? Is everyone excited, or what's it like?
I think combination of excitement, probably a little bit of exhaustion at the moment. We're coming towards the tail end of an event. Certainly for us with basketball, we've just come off 2 days of quarterfinals. So we've had 4 games back to back over that period. So we're sort of over the hump of our largest games now, but we've also during those 2 days just seen immense interest, not just from the fans who are in the stadium, but we have had absolutely packed sections of the Olympic family area within the basketball, and I think it's really just highlighting what a huge sport it's become.
And if you had to compete in an Olympic sport, which one would it be?
Tough question. I think I'd love for my athleticism to be enough to compete in the basketball, but I don't think that's going to happen. I've got to admit, I loved watching the canoe slalom earlier this week, and I'm a big man. Sometimes gravity going downhill can help with that. So maybe the canoe slalom cross, I could let out a bit of aggression in the 4-person race. See if there's some success and a gold medal at the end of that.
Hi, my name's Hayley Conway. I am a partnership consultant here at the Paris 2024 Olympics for an agency called Sport5.
And what does your job involve?
Oh my gosh, every day is pretty different, but if I had to sum it up, it would be communication. Corporate communication, a little bit of consumer, but mainly corporate comms. As part of the sponsorship that I'm working on, we have 200 guests arriving in Paris every 2 days, so our communication has to be very succinct because we're dealing with people from all over the world. So we have people flying in from the US, China, Australia. So we're dealing with their travel to when they're on the ground, to getting them to their events, as well as the company's initiatives and events around the games. So there's a lot of different communication streams and a lot of travel delays that affects a lot of things. So yeah.
And how did you get this job?
I got this job through a friend who saw it advertised, who then had a conversation with their friend, and then they asked me if they thought it would be something I'd be interested in, because I was going to be in Europe anyway for Formula One, and I actually hadn't considered doing Paris. So once they sort of mentioned it, I was like, you know what? Yes, let's do Paris. And I went through 4 interviews. It was quite a long process. I actually didn't think I was going to get it by the end. I was like, there is no way I'm getting this job. There are people that have done 1 million Olympics in their time. And here we are.
Do you remember 1 or 2 questions from the interviews that they asked you?
A lot of the questions were around VIP management, how I deal with difficult guests or difficult talent, I should say. I mean, I'm pretty lucky that I've always had pretty good people that I get to look after in all my events, but yeah, so that was some of the main questions. And I think it was how quickly I could move seemed to be like the common thread, like was how quickly can you be in Europe when you're going to be in Europe. So yeah, I did the first interview in January.
And the Olympics are pretty special. What's the vibe like for staff behind the scenes?
Oh, it's actually so special. A lot of our team, I think I'm the only one who this is their first time doing an Olympics. So most people that I work with are on their 6th or 7th Olympics, including Winter Olympics, and they literally just follow the world and do Olympics. So they know a lot about every sport, every code. They've got so many fun stats, and they love it. Like they come back and it's like a really big community, like people that work on the Olympics. They all know each other. So yeah, this is my first Olympics. I would probably do another one.
Where does it rank in your stack of career highlights?
Oh my gosh, it's pretty up there. Like Paris, I think an Olympics in Paris just feels extra special. The stadium builds that they've done, it's not the MCG. You're going to a volleyball match under the Eiffel Tower, which is just incredible. These are, I can appreciate the production in them as well. Just the pool for the swimming, obviously being a temporary swimming pool, and then it's getting converted to turn into a basketball court. I might have that wrong, but don't quote me on it. But yeah, just the build and just the magic around Paris as a city is pretty special.
And what's been your favourite moment of the game so far for you personally?
I don't know if I have a moment as such, but just being in Paris, I think I'd probably underestimated that I'm working at the Olympics in Paris. So the first day that I got here, I was kind of just sort of taken back a little bit, which is weird because I'm not someone that usually gets sort of taken back by things like that. So I've been to Paris 1 million times as well, but there was something special in the air when I arrived, and it all sort of just dawned on me that I'm working at the Olympics. Like, this is pretty cool. So it's sort of just been the experience in itself, just being here and getting to go to different sporting matches that I never would get to go to, like fencing. And I've always wanted, since I was little, wanted to go to the swimming, and just to actually be at a swimming final the other night, teenage Hayley could have never imagined that. So it's just pretty special to be here and in amongst it.
And if you could compete in any Olympic sport, which event would you want to be in?
I wish I've got a new appreciation for beach volleyball. I wish I could play beach volleyball, but the reality of that, probably not that great. But I also wish I could be one of the divers that do the synchronized diving, because that is insane skill. So I mean, all these athletes are extremely skilled, so I think I'd love to do any of it, to be honest.
So my name's Briony Carlyon, and my job is a media official for the International Golf Federation.
And how did you get your job working on the Paris Olympics?
So my day-to-day job is with the DP World Tour. So I'm based in London, and the tour forms part of the IGF. So the media work that I do all year round with the players means that we have access for some of our staff to come to Paris and to work in delivering all the media and broadcast requests for this event.
And what's the feeling like amongst staff working on the games?
I think everyone's pretty excited because golf has only been back in the Olympics for the last two, so Rio and Tokyo. So coming back to Paris here at Le Golf National, I've come here for a number of years for the French Open and for the Ryder Cup in 2018. So we know the golf course well. A lot of the best players in the world are here, but also from a staff perspective, we've got people from the PGA Tour, DP World Tour, from the RNA, the USGA. So it's a real mix of people, and we're all working together behind the scenes to kind of deliver this tournament, but to also have a good time and experience the Olympics and I guess enjoy these 2 weeks in Paris.
And what's been your favourite moment of the games so far?
Favourite moments so far would be going to the gymnastics a few nights ago to see Simone Biles. I think she is unbelievable in everything that she does, and obviously the greatest gymnast probably to ever compete. So to see her live was incredible, and the tumbles that she did and everything was just beyond awesome. So that was probably the best moment.
And if you had to compete in one Olympic sport, what would it be?
I'd like to say the marathon, but I know that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the girls in that, so I need something else which I'd maybe be good at. I don't know, I've always thought swimming as an Aussie is kind of the one that you want to win, and that's what I used to watch growing up a lot, so maybe the swimming.
I'm Stella and I'm the English content creator for the Paris Olympic Committee.
And how did you get your job?
So I applied online, but I applied 3 different times for 3 different roles and got rejected, but I stayed persistent and was lucky enough to find this application online, and then I just went for it.
And what did they ask you in the interview process?
So they asked me a lot about my vision for the Olympics and what kind of storytelling I wanted to share with the rest of the world, and I really always like to bring it back to brand personality and like making sure that people from everywhere around the world can experience it from the comfort of their own home. So, you know, if they're based in Australia and they can't get to the Olympics, like they're experiencing all the behind the scenes stuff as though they're right here. So really trying to like touch people even when they're not here. Just share that personality, share that humour, and invite people to experience the Olympics and be a part of it no matter what.
And what's the feeling like with staff behind the scenes?
It's amazing. I feel like everybody on our team has done something different, something cool. They have so many different experiences to bring, whether it's working at the Tour de France or, you know, Roland Garros or with the Commonwealth Games. Like everyone's just done something really cool. We have photographers that I've worked with, like, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo, like just some amazing big star names, and everyone has a different story to tell you, and I love learning from everyone here.
And where does this rank in your stack of career highlights?
Number 1. It definitely has to be number 1. It's amazing. It's a whole different ball game, bigger than anything I've ever done before, and I don't know how I'm going to top it actually afterwards, but yeah, it's insane.
And what's been your favourite moment of the game so far?
Definitely being at Champions Park yesterday and seeing all the athletes come out with like their gold medals, silver medals, bronze medals, and just like taking in all the fans, like walking, doing the catwalk up to the Eiffel Tower, and just seeing all their emotions, like having them come up to you afterwards and just be so excited, like saying this is their dream and seeing them achieve their dream. Like you get goosebumps and you want to cry for them because it's so amazing. So yeah, definitely Champions Park yesterday.
And if you could compete in one Olympic sport, what would you do?
Well, my background is tennis, so I love tennis, and I feel like tennis would have been the best one for me to do, but if I could do any one, like if I was actually talented, maybe like gymnastics or like diving, like something like really cool, like where it takes so much skill, but yeah, something like that. All the flips, all the flexibility, like, yeah, they're insane. Like if I could be like Simone Biles, that'd be the dream. Yeah.
Tom Hickey, Director of Business Development for Brisbane 2032.
And what brings you to Paris?
So there's a group of us here from the team. We're part of the official IOC Observer program. So doing a lot of tours of certain parts of the game, seeing how they work. That can range from the sporting venues, which is great, but also a lot of back of house things. So for example, I've toured the village, I've toured the uniform collection centre where all the volunteers and staff collect their uniforms, logistics, back of house, front of house, sort of every part of the games, transport, security, everything. So yeah, it's been a great experience for the team and a lot of learnings for, you know, when we think about Brisbane.
And what are some of those learnings?
Well, I mean, there's some things Paris have done which are new. They've sort of, I guess, pushed the boundaries, which is great. So then that makes us think, well, what can we take from their games? For example, you might have seen a very creative opening ceremony. They've done really well with live sites. You know, just walking around Paris, the city's really activated everywhere, which is great. I just came from the Park of Nations where about 10 or 15 NOC houses are all together from different countries, and it's like a mini, you know, world. Like you go from Mexico to Colombia to Brazil in a couple of minutes. So that's really exciting, and we sort of just have thought bubbles about, oh, could you put that in Brisbane? Could that be on the Gold Coast, Sunny Coast? Yeah, so it's exciting, but also blows your mind about what's possible.
And for the Brisbane 32 staff who are here, what's the feeling amongst the crew who've come across being out in Paris?
Yeah, loving it. I mean, for a lot of people, this is their first Olympic Games they've been to. Some of the team have various games experience, but some of that is other, like Com Games or other events, for example. So, and even myself, I worked at the IOC, but never went to a summer Olympic Games when I was there. So it's just seeing the scale of it, seeing how much resources, how many people, like that, you can read about it and imagine it, but seeing it in real life, I think, is really when it hits home. So that's the main thing for the team, really.
And what was some of your past experience that led to this job?
Well, as I mentioned, I worked at the IOC briefly. So when I was looking to come back to Australia, that was just after the Games have been awarded to Brisbane. So the Olympic world is a bit of a unique world, I guess. So when you're transitioning from the IOC, it kind of makes sense to look for the Games that's in your country if you know, you're lucky enough to have one. So that was how I ended up here. And yeah, it's good to be back in Europe looking at Games and then thinking, what can we do in Australia?
And can you recall one or two interview questions that you nailed to get this job?
I don't know about nailed, but I think, like I'd had a few roles in sport before at the IOC and the NFL, so it was probably about talking about those experiences, both very different organisations with how they display sport, how they promote it. One obviously runs a league and one's an event every 2 years, either summer or winter. So yeah, drawing on those experiences, but talking about what we need to do to make Brisbane successful, because it is very different to Paris or LA or Tokyo, these sort of really well-known, iconic global cities. We have a different challenge in Brisbane, but it's about taking things from those games and making them work for us.
And two quick ones to finish. What's been your highlight of the games so far?
I think, well, I went to the sailing yesterday. That was great. I think I really like seeing the sports that aren't that well known, or at least for me, that well known. So I went to the handball the other day and the crowd was going absolutely like wild. It was 2 European countries, and it's not the biggest sport in Australia. I'm pretty sure we don't even have a team competing. But seeing different parts of the world combined for their sport that they're really passionate about, that's what's really good about the Olympics, I think.
And if you had to compete in any sport, what would you put yourself into?
Well, we were saying now we should try and take up handball, because the Australian team has a spot in 8 years. Someone has to fill it, so maybe I'll go for that.
So I'm Kiri, Madhani, and I work as a Senior Commercial Partnerships Manager at DAZN.
And what experience led to you getting this job?
So I was previously in sport for development, working to use sport as a tool for social change in urban areas, working at a charity, and I was very much interested in the partnership side of that job. And to be honest, my network got me into DAZN. So I met my now boss at a football game in hospitality. Very lucky to have those tickets at a Chelsea game, in fact. And met Hannah and got chatting about women's football and how important it was in my life and the career that I've had so far. Really wanted to work in it, believed in what she was doing at DAZN, and the rest is history. We went for a coffee and that was that.
And what do you usually do in your job back in London?
So my day-to-day job entails working with brands and sponsors to activate around the rights that DAZN hold for women's football. We have all of our rights sitting on a free platform that are available to fans across the world for free. And my job is to try and squeeze as much value from partnerships that we get in for broadcast sponsorship to try and grow the game even further and ensure that we can keep fans access free for longer.
And what brings you to Paris?
I've been very lucky to be invited to Paris by FIBA, so the International Federation for Basketball. It's an association, they're based out in Geneva alongside UEFA and other big corporations. And they've invited me to come and watch the women's basketball, so I watched 3x3 on my first day, which was amazing. Never seen that sport before. Very good urban sport, new to the Olympic Games, fantastic setup, really good crowd pleaser. And tonight I'm going to be lucky enough to watch the US women's against Nigeria in the quarterfinals, courtesy of FIBA again. And it's just a bonus that I've got to meet so many friends whilst I've been out here as well.
And when you were applying for your job at DAZN, do you remember one or two interview questions that they asked you?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind was around experience of working with partners and the impact of those partnerships that I had had. So success stories, demonstrating tangible examples of where I'd created a good partnership that worked and solved a solution. And another one was around my skill set in planning, strategy, presenting and pitching. So the key skills that I have to use at the moment are those 4 areas. And so I gave some examples of pitches that I'd previously done and won, but also pitches that I hadn't been successful in achieving, and getting the feedback and then putting that feedback into practice for future pitches.
And what's been your personal highlight of the games whilst you've been here?
Whilst I've been here, probably meeting up with my friends that I met in the FISU Forum in, I think it was 2016, was it? In Montpellier. And I hadn't seen Naomi and Paul for 3 years, so it's been great to see them. They've flown over from New Zealand, and obviously meeting up with Ruben again, all the way from Australia. So for me, that's been a highlight, the networks and the ability to be able to use sport as a way to connect and reconnect with friends. From a games point of view, the 3x3 basketball experience and seeing the French men's team in the final, the atmosphere was outstanding. The arena's been so specially and cleverly built to create such a loud environment and get behind the athletes. It's a very quick sport, and it wasn't one that I'd watched before and wasn't one that I followed, and I've now been converted, so I'd say that was also a sporting highlight.
And if you had to compete in the Olympics, what sport would you be competing in?
In these Olympics, probably cross canoe, kayak slalom, the one that they get to go in the water loads because it is so hot. It's like 32 degrees, and it looks like a one that I would quite, I'd benefit from in Paris. There's no beaches and coastline here, so I'd take any water sport, but that one looks quite fun.
Hi, my name's Penelope Roth, and at the Paris Olympics I'm working as the press conference and mixed zone supervisor for the tennis and the boxing.
And what does that involve?
So for the press conference side of things, it involves setting up the rooms before the athletes arrive, making sure that the right name placards are on the table, welcoming the athletes, and making sure that the press conference runs as smoothly as possible with a nice flow of questions and keeping everybody happy in the room. And for the mixed zone side of things, it's just ensuring that we have journalists in the right place, ready for when the athletes walk through, and helping to facilitate those interviews.
And how did you get this job?
I got this job because I work for Roland Garros every year, and the tennis and the boxing is taking place at Roland Garros. So I was lucky enough to be offered this job through my contacts.
And what do you normally do outside of the Olympics?
So I do this kind of work a lot of the time around the year, working a lot in the tennis Grand Slams such as the Australian Open, Roland Garros and Wimbledon, and also on other sporting events such as the Rugby World Cup, always working in the media operations side of things.
And what sort of questions do they ask you for these sort of jobs? Have you had to do interviews at any of them in the past?
Oh, it's been a while since I've been interviewed for one of these jobs, but when I have been, it's always asking me what's my previous experience, do I know the media, am I familiar with the athletes, or what sort of skills are transferable from other jobs into this kind of work.
And where does the Olympics rank in your stack of career highlights?
For me, I knew when I moved to Europe 5 years ago that the Olympics was an event that I always dreamed to be a part of, so it's really up there with one of the top things that I've done in my career so far.
And what's the feeling like behind the scenes amongst other staff? Is everyone excited, or what's it like?
The feeling is jovial. I feel that everyone is really excited to be part of this event that is happening in, well, most people's backyard. For people that are from France, having this taking place in Paris, it's very special, and I feel that the feeling of the team behind the scenes is very much the same as what we're seeing out in the streets of Paris. It's excitement, and everyone is really happy and motivated to be there.
And if you had to compete in one particular sport, what would it be?
I think I would have to say if I could blitz any of these sports, it would be the gymnastics. I think they're so impressive at what they do, and it takes me back to my childhood days doing gymnastics.
Hey friends, one last thing before you go. If you really want to make an impact in sport, then subscribe to the Sports Grad newsletter. Inside, we share all the latest job openings and networking events, so you're always aware of opportunities to land a job and grow your network. Plus, we share a Q&A with a professional on how they grow their career in sport. Here we talk about things like how they moved overseas or negotiated their salary or landed a new job or promotion, made a career change, and so much more. It's kind of like a little boost of inspiration in your inbox before the weekend. So if you're like us, you're career driven and you're keen to progress quickly, you're going to love the SportsGrad newsletter. To get it, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe, or follow the link in the show notes. See you next time.